And then when we talk, we just talk to each other, right?
Right. Yeah. Don't worry.
Well,
don't worry about the camera.
ask.
No. This is try to make it conversational. Yeah. Even with all this other stuff going on. Who was the top last time? I think
I was 2 last time.
Right. So I'm 2. You're 1. All right. We're not going off book. I've been listening to the show. I know you've been free-forming. We're going to stay.
That's fine.
All right. You need a clap?
Perfect. Welcome to Two Beers and a Podcast with Brad and Mike, 2 marketing guys with a love of great craft beer and the stories that go with them.
I'm Brad Fruhoff, the word guy.
And I'm Mike Rattay, the visual guy.
And the show is all about the experience of beer, from the label to the glass, from the brew house to the bar. And each week we feature 2 beers that we feel we have something to say about. Did the thing you did. Yes. All right, well then, that's your job anyhow. Go back to I'm Mike Rattay, the visual guy.
And I'm Mike Rattay, the visual guy.
And you're 2.
And this show is all about the experience of beer, from the label to the glass, from the brew house to the bar. Each week we feature 2 beers that we feel have something to say or that we think worth saying something about.
And this week we're very excited to be sitting down with Chris Quinn, co-founder of the Beer Temple in Chicago's Avondale neighborhood. So Chris, welcome. Thanks for sitting down with us. And
Yeah.
It's very cool to be here. So let's start by just getting into the beer. Cheers.
There you are.
Thank
It's
you.
It's super fruity. So tell us about the beer we're drinking.
The beer is from Allagash Brewing in Portland, Maine, and the beer is called Strictivus. It's a fruited tart wheat beer that I just think is really great for kind of spring, summer weather, although today is cold and rainy,
not so much of that.
I still really like it. Rosé beers have kind of become a little tiny bit of a thing, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily a rosé beer, but I think it has a lot of the same qualities to it. It has a nice, like, crisp character to it. It has fruitiness without it being in any way cloying. It's still quite dry, and I think the best rosé wines kind of accomplish that too. Some of them taste kind of over extracted, and I don't really like that, and I think that's the same with some fruit beers as well. And I think this is just a really easy drinking warm weather beer.
Yeah, I get that. And I'm not generally attracted to the fruit beers in terms of I don't reach for them unless somebody gives them to me. So yeah, it was an interesting choice. And
is there a reason why you don't?
Because they often are too sweet. Like they're just
yeah,
it's too much. So it's the rare fruit beer that I'll be impressed with.
Like the old-fashioned, like back in the day, brew pub of the early 2000s and stuff, where you went there and everyone had like their blackberry wheat beer, and it was just gross.
It was just too much. Yeah.
So,
but you're right. This is sweet right when you get it, but then it dries out, and it's nice.
Cool.
So so I was surprised, I guess, when I was doing a little research, to realize you've only been around since 2013 with the Beer Temple. I must have found you right around the time you first opened, because I just assumed you'd been around a while. And I don't know exactly what that was, but tell me about where you sort of came from and how the Beer Temple started.
Well, I was not in the beer industry really at all. I didn't really have an aha moment for craft beer. Some people had like this kind of light switch thing. It wasn't really what happened with me. I was in college in the mid 90s when a lot of the first like microbrew boom happened, and I was drinking some of those beers. They were often a little too aggressive for me, frankly. But I was never really into just regular industrial lager beer that much. I always wanted something a little bit different. I'm not even sure why. If it was just I didn't like how it was marketed, maybe. Like, oh, I'm not like that. I'm different,
Right.
Who knows? But I was always trying to find something a little bit different, and I also thought it was neat that I was getting at that time. Dogfish Head was in Delaware, where I went to college, and they were brand new. I think they're like 2 years old, and I think their first tap handle in one of their first tap handles in the state outside their immediate town of Rehoboth was in Newark, which is the college town. And I remember seeing it, and I was just kind of drawn to that as well. Then over the years, I'm giving you a pretty long story.
That's all right. Yeah, no, go for it.
We're drinking.
Yeah, right. So then I had just kind of been going to, like, now beer festivals I think are for much more like hardcore hobbyists and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I would just I remember going to like barley wine festivals and stuff like that, not even knowing what a barley wine was.
Right.
And just like, oh, what's this? And then, dipping out for a long time and just kind of being on the periphery. Also, Philadelphia, where I grew up, was, I think, a much more mature craft beer market than Illinois was. And I moved out here and again, was just kind of floating around. And at one point, I was at a bar called Sheffield's here in Chicago, and I was having a Dogfish Head beer, and I thought something just struck me. I was like, man, this is like really cool. I've had some family who had wine shops and stuff like that. I like wine a lot. I love wine, but to me, it's always the idea that there's only certain places in the planet where your local stuff is truly world class. And I thought it was neat that there was something going on in beer that was centered in America that could be made literally anywhere, because it's it is a manufactured product at some level. I mean, it's a little bit agricultural, but and I just thought that was really neat, and I wanted to look more into that. And the more then I really went down the rabbit hole and decided I wanted to do something different. And after a trip to Belgium, decided that I wanted to open up kind of like a wine boutique as beer store. Back then, the original spot, and then the rest is history.
Had you been thinking like, I'm going to start a business and just looking for a model, or you just...
No, I wasn't that smart. I wasn't that smart. It kind of all came to me like, what if we did this? And that would be cool. And then went kind of all in. Got held up for a little while, so the store was probably supposed to open in like 2011, so a little bit earlier than that. Got held up with a few things, but got open, and here we are, like 6 years later from when we opened, and we're in a different location now, very close to where we started.
Right.
Essentially across the alley, I don't know.
So you were looking for something, you didn't have it, so you kind of wanted a beer shop, a wine shop.
The other thing was, I noticed that there were these amazing beers being made here that people were putting their heart and soul into, and then it was ending up in some crappy like liquor store that had bad fluorescent lighting and bad linoleum floors, and the people there really didn't seem to care much about the product at all. And I just thought it was, in a way, kind of tragic that it's getting all the way to the end point, almost to the end point, the end being when it's in someone's glass, but and just not getting really any love on the retail side. There were a few places that were really championing craft beer on the bar side of things, like Quenchers and Map Room and Clark Street Ale House and Hop Leaf and Sheffield's and places like that. But from a retail side of things, that didn't really exist that I had seen, except for like the big box stores like Binny's and stuff, which were definitely on top of it, but they were just like everything, and if craft beer is popular, we'll put more space to craft beer. And as soon as hard seltzer starts becoming a big thing, we're gonna take some back from craft beer. I didn't think there was a lot of romance in that as well, and kind of a bleeding heart. And I was like, this is a romantic product, and I want to kind of give it its kind of what it deserves.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I know you have Cicerone. What level are you at?
I am level 2.
Level
There were only
2.
3 when I.
Yeah, they added right. But that's the same concept with that Ray Daniels had, was looking around and going like, why don't we treat this the same in a similar way that we treat wine, right? So that's interesting that in terms of a differentiator, it's not just another place to buy booze. It's we're going to present it to you and treat it in a certain way.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever told the story of why I got my Cicerone. A lot of people ask me that because I've had it now. It's been 9 years. I got it almost exactly 9 years, and it was so I could get a bank loan because the banker is like, well, you're not in the industry, you've never done it before. You say you know a lot. How do I know you know? I was like, that's a good point. How do you know that I know? And then I was like, aha,
I have a degree,
certification.
Yeah, sure.
So that's why I got it, and I was like, here's proof. He's like, oh.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's curious, and that's interesting. As a there's obviously an economic reason there that makes good sense. Do you find that do you have any sense of how important that is to your customers here, that your staff often is Siebel or Cicerone trained too, right?
Yeah, a lot of them are, yeah.
And do you have any sense of, like, from talking to people, that's part of what they value about this place?
I think they very much value that they can trust the recommendations and trust what people are saying, and also trust that if somebody doesn't know, they'll say, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just a trust thing. Sometimes it comes up that people are like, this guy's a Cicerone, whether it's me or somebody else here. And, I think having that is maybe good on a resume or somewhere where you can see it, but I'm not going to wear my Cicerone pin all over the place or anything like that. I think what it does do is just allow people, people who've passed their Cicerone at whatever level, it shows that they care about craft beer. It shows that they're somewhat knowledgeable about it, and I think that really that's really what we're looking for. And I think if sometimes those two things go hand in hand, but it's not like I require people to have a Cicerone. Okay. And people have asked that and asked me why not, and to me it's because if you're passionate and you're knowledgeable and you don't want to get your Cicerone, I'm not going to make you get one. But I think I guess I didn't really answer your question. I think some people care, but most people don't.
Well, you're saying it maybe is less, people aren't necessarily asking. I don't know, I think to some extent, I think Ray Daniels would like it, that if people were going into places and just like they're seeing the upside down independence seal, they would see a Cicerone badge.
We've got a Cicerone.
Yeah, that's ideally what they're looking for. But you're saying maybe people aren't asking and like checking, like, are you guys Cicerone certified here? But it's coming out more intangibly in terms of like the service and the way that you're able to, the level of service and the kind of way you can.
If they want to certify businesses and come through and recertify them, I think that'd be cool. I'd be down for that and have some sort of placard on there. But that would be cool. But short of that, if we had some sort of emblem, what does that mean? That we employ a Cicerone? Is he here now? Does he know or she know what year this is? And they're not there. So you're not the person that.
Okay, right.
So I'm not going to listen to you.
Right.
But I do like the idea of them kind of certifying the spot. I think that's kind of cool. There's places that do it for draft, and certainly for cask. There's like cask star certifications and stuff like that, which we also haven't gotten. But
okay.
But we could. The guy who
Well, okay. So
digressing.
But one of the things you do is you actually, because you have two different temperatures back there.
Yep.
You are trying to that's part of the service too, though, is we're going to present. And again, it's not even looking at the thing here. It doesn't actually say which beers are in the colder one and which are in the. But it's just something that's an intangible that you want. It's important to you that it's there, even if the customer doesn't necessarily know what's happening.
I think that's like that with a lot of experiential things. I think a lot of times people don't really, at the most, fully consciously understand if they're comfortable or not comfortable or having a good time or not. They just like, I don't know, it was okay, but they can't really say why. I think a lot of that with atmosphere as well, where they just didn't feel comfortable kind of being there, so they kind of take off and don't really know why. I hope it'd be the same with the beer, as long as we have good beers and we're taking care of them and kind of serving them a way that is going to be enjoyable for people, that hopefully it'll matter to them. And if we're serving, and it doesn't even need, people say are the warmer beers for barley wines and stouts and really strong beers. It's not necessarily has to be. I mean, I guess right now we have Imperial Mild on, which is a 4.5% ABV, British beer on the warm box, because those are traditionally beers that were served a little warmer. And maybe if somebody's drinking that beer not thinking about it, maybe they enjoyed it a little bit more at that temperature. They don't know why. They just remember they went to Beer Temple, they had the beer, they really loved it.
Yeah.
And that's fine by me. I don't need to explain to them like, you liked it because I put it in a warm box. You're welcome.
Right.
One of those subtle knowledge tips that you can just help guide people, as you said, through the experience.
Yeah.
If you get complaints, then you deal with it, but it's just your way to help people down the path.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you also do some educational things as part of this. I was thinking about, in particular, because it used to just be the bottle shop. Did you always hope to have a space to have a bar, or was that something that you realized just as things were changing in the industry, you were going to want to add on?
It gives us more flexibility to do stuff. The laws kind of opened up a little bit in Chicago, and this new space opened up, and we were kind of figuring out what we wanted to do. What would we do if we did have this space? And it just kind of all came together. But yeah, I was flat out not sure which direction I wanted to go. But I felt like kind of making this more of a flagship place rather than opening up a second location just felt right at the time. And I felt there was a lot of fun stuff that we could do with beer bars. And I know that some of my favorite places in the world are like really awesome beer bars, and to do that for someone else would be pretty cool to do. Like create something that is actually meaningful to people in a place where they actually have a good time and can associate good memories to is pretty cool.
Yeah. Keep enjoying this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the place is gorgeous. I love all the murals. I mean, it's decorated with the old school, like it's from these chairs. I feel like I've seen them in a bowling alley, but torn and crappy. And so like just to bring a lot of the old school, the beautiful looking bar, freaking pretzels, because no one does that. I mean, that's all just extra hand care to create that experience. And so that's...
I've done, a lot of that is intentional, taking kind of like classic bar things and kind of putting a little twist on them.
Right.
Like the bar stools, like the breadsticks or the pretzel rods and stuff like that. But the pretzel rods, I'm also like certifiably insane when it comes to certain things. And like it took me forever to find these breadsticks that I had at this one place. They wouldn't tell me where they got them. I'm looking all over the place. I thought they were pumpernickel. They're actually rye. And they went out of business. And I called them. I was like, where'd you get them? Tell me now. And the guy on the other end of the phone was like, he finally was like, someone's going to call you back. And then like 20 minutes later, manager called me back and said, this is the guy. I called him. It's an older gentleman who I found out for the past 25 years only makes breadsticks. Because I was asking what kind he makes. He's like, well, I have rye and I have salt and I have poppy seed. I was like, well, what else? He's like, well, I have garlic. I was like, no, other than breadsticks, what do you have? And he's like, oh, nothing. I only bake breadsticks. I was like, that's pretty cool.
That's
so
awesome.
like a twist on that. We have neons. I think neons are such a beer bar thing. But all ours are like, with the exception of one, they're all custom made, kind of designed by people at the brewery, yeah. So I don't know if it's in the shop, but we have like a scratch neon, which is
We'll try to
so
pick some of those up.
absurd. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so absurd. The concept of them having a
Right.
neon so it's a joke, and some people get it. Like that's really funny. And even like we have, some taxidermy in here.
Yeah,
That's my latest.
saw the bison.
Yeah, so it's like a ridiculously oversized head on the wall. So stuff like that is, I think, kind of a fun way to kind of tweak traditional things that are in bars that I have fond memories of.
And the artist for the mural over here, does he do some of the Hot Butcher?
Yeah, he's done stuff for Hot Butcher and Three Floyds. It's Van Jetza.
Cool.
And he's a local Chicago guy, and he came in and it started out with him doing part of one wall, and then it grew to 2 walls, and then 3.5 walls, and just it was awesome to have him come in. And all the art that we have in here is all from artists who have done beer label
so
art.
it's actually
Oh, very
All
cool.
of them, yeah. So the hallway, we have one.
off-color in those.
Yep,
Yeah, I
and
saw
that's
that off-color
18th
stuff.
Street is in the back room. So it's all
The actual
artists,
label.
yeah, and it's
That's
them, but they also, they do beer art. So they're all it's all linked back.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe your people, like your audience?
Oh boy. Here, customers, you mean?
Yeah.
My customers? My audience?
Do you think they're different than your radio audience?
Man, you're asking me things that I just feel like maybe I should have ever looked into, but haven't. I think it's a combination of destination traffic and people who are passionate and find, value in making the extra voyage to come here. And then some people who are just neighborhood folks as well. Almost everybody who comes here is equidistant or closer to another place where they can buy beer. So it's very meaningful that they choose to come to us instead.
Yeah.
So I think that's the audience, people who value the extra effort that we put in to some degree. They maybe value it enough to walk a block this way instead of walking a block that way, or they may value it enough to, when they come in from Japan, to stop in here. So it's just people who, for one reason or other, care enough to come in. I think that's who it is. Does that answer the question?
Somewhat.
Okay.
Well, it's, part of what I've been thinking about is the way. So I was watching. Good Beer Hunting did a 2-part series on. It was called Tap Rooms versus Everybody, and I think you guys were talking about it on Insiders Roundtable probably a couple times in the last few months.
No idea where this is going.
Right, but I guess like the question of how do you make something like this work when obviously a lot of the big excitement that seems to be these days about like the breweries themselves having tap rooms, and the big question is, do you then become a guy who has like all these events and is constantly like featuring the new thing and trying to stay ahead of those trends, or like somebody like Michael Roper at Hop Leaf is saying, like, we have an identity and we're trying to stay true to that. I'm always going to have Sarah Pale and I'm always going to have something from Bell's, and like that's like people know to expect that, and it's old school, but that's what I'm doing. He's almost like doubling down on that in some ways, although obviously he's created event spaces and they've got great food there.
So
and
well
other things
established,
going
it's
on.
20 years.
Yeah.
The business is 20 years.
So, and you're doing this, you're only in 6 years.
Year 2 for the tap room.
Year 2 for the tap room. But you're kind of, what you're saying, what's your audience is a marketing question, but you've been approaching it more from what is a traditionally craft space of like, what do I want? What do I want to create? What do I want to share with people?
Well, at some point, I think you're faced with reality that you're not doing anybody a favor by going out of business. You're not doing your employees a favor. You're not doing your customers a favor by going out of business. So, if I only wanted to serve imperial milds because I thought that was the greatest, ridiculous style that there ever was. Great. I mean, I'm super true to what I believe in and stuff like that, but I'm also, it's going to be a really, really tough row to hoe, so to speak. And so I think you have to, there's always just going to be that line you have to walk, and you have to decide where that line is for you. Is that I want to serve, if someone likes beer, I want to have that beer for them. And I want to kind of be the big tent. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Or you can be super niche and focused, or you can be like, I'm here to throw a party every single night. People like to party, and I'm going to be the place where people party. And they're going to drink a lot of beer here, and that's what I want to be. I think that's also legit as well. Mm-hmm. I don't want to, for me, drifting too far into like, man, I wish I had some of that, like, party drinker money. Let me start, doing like a keg stand station or something. Mm-hmm. Be pretty, not very sanitary and probably very illegal, but yeah, I just don't know if, and again, me being kind of like like I was saying, I'm kind of a bleeding heart. It would be just hard for me, as silly as it sounds and as ridiculous as it sounds, it's true, for me to just like be okay at the end of the day, like living this thing that I'm not really into. Yeah. I just assume find something else to do then, There's a million things to do out here. Why am I gonna just kind of, I don't know, I could have done that at my desk job, something I don't really care about. So, no offense to my previous employer.
Right. Yeah, but like what you're describing though too is still like a sense of there's a personal brand kind of quality to it, even though this isn't Chris Quinn's beer temple, it's just the beer temple. Mm-hmm. And you're not even usually behind the bar when I've been here. So,
because they have two little kids.
Right, yeah.
Honestly, though, I get to pick. I'm not behind the counter as much as I used to be, and it was a choice. It's a choice. I love being behind the counter. It's still like, in a lot of ways, my favorite thing is to be in the bottle shop. Yep. Back there. I'm not as qualified as the people are now because they're in the trenches all the time. Two little kids I've got, and that's where I'm going to be for the next couple of years, and then I can transition back to this. Come back. Anyway, totally hijacked your question.
No, it's because the point just being that you are still kind of saying like, whatever this is, if it's going to work, it has to work for me. Mm-hmm. And maybe that means we're not. Maybe that means we don't get to be a certain size or something, But you're actually also kind of saying like, you believe that the customers are out there that want the kind of thing that you can give them, right? Yeah. That kind of sense of like, I can chase all the customers, or what we're supposed to be doing, according to all the the business knowledge, is like niche down. Like, what are you good at? Create that experience, but you're saying also it's like something you do want to share. It's something you're trying to say like, how can I want this kind of thing, but I think other people will like it too, and I believe those people are out there, and you're finding them. And we want to ask you about how you're finding them. Should we refresh?
Should we re-up beers?
Sure. Yeah, let's re-up beers.
Yeah. Founder says a new diversity person. And there was like a period when I wasn't really following the story closely enough, but there was definitely a period of like, are we drinking founders right now, or are we mad at them? But then they have this new person who seems really qualified. I don't know, did you go through any ambivalence about that?
Yeah, we talked about it quite a bit on the show. I thought there were some people who had some really good. Oh, it was a lost episode. It was a lost episode for other reasons. Yeah, I think it's there's a lot going on. Is this on the record?
Are we on the record?
We are recording, so it's up to you if you want to.
Right.
We could cut it if you really don't want.
I think, from what I've heard, is I think there's no excuse for that stuff not being caught and not being addressed, and it getting to that point that it did. At the other on the other hand, I think they were. It seems to me that brew pub was opened in a really kind of depressed part of Detroit, and that holistically, there certainly could be an argument made that the intention higher up was to be inclusive, because there was a lot of people who were underserved who weren't getting any craft beer and didn't really have access to it, and that they could have easily gone to a much more of a sure thing kind of taproom place, but they went into a place that was like I was saying, underserved, and so I don't think it's like a top to bottom systemic thing, like we're only going to hire people who make like terrible racial comments or something like that. At the same time, I do think it's the buck has to stop somewhere, and that stuff can't be okay.
Right.
But my point that I guess I was trying to make is it's really, I think, a personal call that everyone has to make.
Sure.
And it's easy to say, these people did this, these people are evil, they should go out of business. And if that's what you think, I'm sure you can have some justifiable reasons to think that. You're also probably going to be hurting some really good people as well. So I think it's just up to everybody to try to get the whole story, or as much of the story as they are interested in getting, and making a decision, and realizing that things are rarely as black and white as like, oh my gosh, this brewery that I really love that I actually really hate, and that you can, and I mean that's a pretty blatant example of it. But even with breweries that are bought out and stuff like that, I mean, there's a lot of gray area. It's not like, oh, you're bought by Anheuser-Busch. I hate Anheuser-Busch because I like craft, and people who like this don't like that, so I don't like you anymore.
Sure.
It's not. I wish it was that simple, but it just isn't. So.
Yeah, I think I was talking to some person about this with music, and I can't remember the artist who was in the news, and but she was basically saying, like, there's a lot of people making really good music right now. Like, you have other choices if you don't, if this person has just crossed the line. With breweries, and as with anybody else, I think a lot of it too is just the reaction. And I think the initial reaction was not good. The initial way they handled it was not great. It seems like they're trying to stabilize and kind of fix some of those mistakes.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm not 100% up on exactly how everything was handled from the get-go.
And I'm not either, and so I'm not I don't want to I felt ambivalent and kind of trying to feel out, just kind of pay attention to what news I get, and I haven't finished that interview, so the panel, the Brew Talk, so I haven't heard all of what I can't remember her name now, but what she has to say about
the BA's person, or this is from
not the BA person. So Brew Talks did. They had Dr. J, but they also had Founder's new person, and they had Shyla Shepard, Bow and Arrow Brewing they're in Albuquerque. Oh. She's Native American.
Got it.
And has a native themed and mostly native run brewery. Yeah. So it's it's all on YouTube and all.
Cool.
Actually, they also did that as the Brew Talks, the Brewbound podcast. They put them out that way.
Great
too.
podcast.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get in here.
Oh, cheers.
Cheers on this.
Okay.
And tell us what we're drinking here.
This is the Ondex Maibach. And until it's not May anymore, then we'll call it a Hellesbach. It's just a really nice, strong-ish light lager from Germany, Franconian brewery, and just the depth of malt. I mean, this is just a beautiful, clean beer where you can, not think about it and just kind of have it something that you just kind of are refreshing your palate with, or whatever, just to drink, or if you want to think about it, there's plenty there to kind of really pay attention to, which I think is not easy to do with a beer. Have something be very drinkable, but also kind of have, a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, it is very malty and almost like honey sweets.
Yeah, biscuity kind of, like a honeyed biscuit.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. So we were talking about customer acquisition. Was that our last statement?
Oh boy.
Right. Yeah. So how do you connect with your, like,
Right.
since you don't actually have a sense of who your customer is, so in terms of like the marketing strategy, but how do you feel like you've been able to connect with people?
By being, I think doing kind of like what you were saying with the old craft beer model is we make what we like and other people will like it too. I think there is some of that. Also listening to what people are saying, via, or be it, face to face or when they're, online reaching out, and just kind of paying attention to general trends and stuff like that and seeing what is interesting to us, what is interesting to other people, and just kind of going at it that way. We've always kind of had a social media presence, in a way that's kind of outsized, or it's outsized compared to like who we actually are. I don't know how that really happened. I'm not very savvy with, I don't know if I should be saying all these things. I'm not very savvy with that stuff, but a lot of it was just out of convenience. And some of them, some of the ideas were just kind of pretty good ideas. I know when we first started, there were a lot of people who were listing all the beers that they got in that day and the price, and I was like, oh, that seems exhausting. Why don't we just put a big stack of them and take a picture? And it was really easy for us to do it that way. And I'm not going to say we were the first to do it that way. We probably weren't. But now that's just like, how it's done. Like that's how okay, now everyone sees us every day. This is the beers that came in. I wish I could say, visual, that's really where stuff's going to be going. And I was just like lazy. Stack them up, take a picture, post it. That's how it started. But again, I didn't even know what Instagram was. And I just knew like, oh, that's another one. So go to that one and push it out there too. And then I saw that our followers on Instagram, and someone's like, oh, you're killing it on Instagram. And I was like, I've never been on Instagram ever. But then we noticed that our followers on Instagram were as high as they were on any other social media outlet. And we're like, oh, okay, what's going on? And now, me personally, that's kind of where I pay the most attention to stuff as a consumer. So in a way, I was ahead of myself. Like I didn't even know what's going on, and then years later, I caught up with myself. Like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Who are these guys are making all these great posts? Oh, that's my guy.
Now I'm right.
My guy posted that.
Well, no, now it's all like, oh my gosh, someone spent a lot of time on this post. There's a lot of little animated people bopping around on this thing, and I'm not going to do that, and I don't want to pay for someone to do that unless it's like my passion is finding stuff on Giphy. Like, good, go for it, man. Do you? But until I find someone like that, it's just going to be, we're going to find easy ways for us to push stuff out there, and that's the same with our the video podcast I used to do and the audio podcast I do now. Video podcast I hit start or record, I guess is the word, start, and then I just said, well, whatever happens. If I burp, I'm burping because I'm not editing this thing because I knew enough that was going to be the first thing to make me not put out content anymore is if I had to work at it too much. And that's just kind of, I think maybe it lent people to be like, oh, this is what this guy is like. Because you can fake it for a certain amount of time, or I guess I could, but I did hundreds of videos and now I've done almost 175 or something 2-hour shows on the radio that are completely unedited for content. We cut out the music break is really all we cut out. And one, it's for my own laziness, because I'm sure it could be, concise and better packaged and stuff like that. But, it is what it is, and I think people do get a sense of who the people on the show really are. Yeah. Especially ones who come on again and again and again and again. They know who's being real and who's towing the company line, and how sometimes some guy, he's not acting like he normally does. Oh, he doesn't want to talk about something, but not saying something is also saying something, if they get to know you. So for us, I think it just shows that we're kind of genuine, and I think being
Yeah.
genuine is important. And I think that's just helped us and worked to our advantage, and that's why I was saying if I just went off and started, becoming like the party bar, it just wouldn't be genuinely me. Now, if I change somehow, and I have a midlife crisis, I can go to Red Corvette, and I'm gonna do a beer on the road show, and I'm gonna get messed up all over this country. It's gonna be great. If I genuinely am that's how I actually feel. You know what? I'll probably find an audience for that if I'm being me. I mean, they might think, "Wow, what a tragic loser," but at least they'll watch. And then, like with Instagram, 5 years later, I'll realize I'm a tragic loser.
Right.
I'll probably realize that in 5 years anyway, no matter what I do.
Yeah. They'll bring in the millennial audience, so they'll be
Yeah.
like, watch this guy just totally melt down.
Yeah, exactly. It's happening. He doesn't even see it.
Right.
It's gripping.
So how did you get into the radio? I know you did the video for a while. Or was that because it can't have been just convenience? There was.
So the video thing started before we opened up the shop. It was supposed to be something to like have some content, prime the pumps a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we got delayed by like 18 months, and it was like, oh, well, I guess I have nothing else to do. I'll do these videos. And it was also supposed to kind of set the tone as like, oh, the earlier ones were much more, the videos were very educational. Like, this is this type of beer. This is the history of this type of beer. Now I'm going to taste these beers and kind of talk about them a little bit. And then with the radio show, it was me trying to find a beer podcast and just listening to people who were just not as knowledgeable as I was wanting to hear. They were just at a different area of their expertise, which is probably like really great for certain people, and they don't want to hear my inside baseball show, But I'm sitting there like yelling at my earbuds, and I'm like, this is totally wrong. Then I was like writing into podcasts and became like a person like, oh, we got a letter from Chris again and stuff like that. So I was like, man, I just want to have like a McLaughlin group. I'm dating myself, or like, whatever. One of those round tables where you have a bunch of people who actually kind of know what they're talking about and just talking about things. And I'd had this idea, and I was a guest on Michael Kaiser of Good Beer Hunting did like this one-time show on Lumpin' Radio before they were even being broadcast. It was just they were internet only. And that's when I met the owner of Lumpin' and Mars, Ed Mar, and he was like, hey, you were great. Because he had a bunch of people on. It was like, my next guest is this person. It was almost like a night, Johnny Carson. So I found Johnny Carson. I found the McLaughlin group. Let me see if I can go even more back in a relevant reference. Yeah. So anyway, Ed was like, hey, if you ever want to do one of these again, that'd be great, because I had done a million of these video shows where it's like, hey, whatever happens, happens, and I think a lot of people were kind of uptight, and I just didn't really care that much. And Ed was like I said, if you ever want to do something like that again, come in. Oh, good. I think Steven's over there. See, that's the sort of stuff that would happen on my video show.
Yeah,
literally stuff
fine.
like that, and I'd be like,
just let it happen.
Yeah, my dog is snoring. Sorry. So then I said, well, Ed, actually, it's funny you should mention that, because I do want to do a show. He's like, oh, yeah, when do you want to do it? I was like, how about every single week? And he was kind of like, yeah, sure, if you want to. And then I showed up, and I've been doing it for over 3 years, and I think both of us were kind of surprised. So that's kind of how the radio show came to be. I never really thought about doing like close to 200 episodes.
Right.
With no help. Well, that's not true. That's not true.
Okay.
I had no production level help outside of the actual technicalities of that stuff, which is very important of like running the board and stuff like that.
Right.
But like getting the guests and putting the topics together and all that sort of stuff. I didn't think I'd be doing it for. I didn't think one way or another, but yeah, that's how that kind of came to be. I'm trying to realize as we talk about this thing, and the answers come up again and again. There's a
bit of a pattern.
Anything I do.
Yes.
But there's interest, and I think that's it. You're not like, okay, we're just going to show the Super Bowl or we're going to show baseball games. Like, you're just interested in this wheelhouse of things, and you're just going to dive as deep as you can into that wheelhouse, and you'll just find other people on your way, and they'll just join you for 300, 200 episodes, whatever. Yeah. So I think that's...
And there's other wheelhouses where I see like, oh, people are going down there. I don't really want to go down there. I want to go down here, or I want to go a little broader at this point. This is kind of as deep as I want to go right now, and then maybe I'll find another place where I want to start going deep again. But it is a little bit of like a gut feel. Like, is this in any way financially stable? Because there are realities. Like I said, if you're not doing anybody a favor by going out of business.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I'm supposed to gouge people and get every little nickel I can, but it also doesn't mean that I'm necessarily doing people a favor by like really going like razor thin on my margins and stuff like that, which when I first opened the bottle shop, I was more like, I'm going to be helping people, this is what I want to do. I realized like hurting myself doesn't help anybody. It's not like I'm getting rich and I'm going to be like, oh, these extra margins will get my second yacht.
Right.
It's like, this is what we need to do to keep this place open, and I think people want to keep this place open. So that's kind of one area that I have kind of like started to put some thought into things. But maybe I should start doing that for other areas of like, what did I spend like 4 hours a week every Thursday night doing for the past 3 years? Maybe I should put a little more thought. What is this actually getting me other than another podcast notices it and wants me to come and be on their show?
Well, that's branding is like the hardest thing to almost quantify until it's gone, and then you're like, where the heck is everybody? Like, I mean, you probably don't realize how much of an impact that has had. I mean, you guys have
Do you?
I don't know what your
Does
Instagram.
Anyone? I don't know if you do.
No, I don't. That's the thing. But like, if you don't have it, you probably wouldn't have as much. Like your Facebook follower account. I don't even know what you guys have on Instagram, but the Facebook is like, it's impressive for just a small little place.
So I think we have an outsized presence to what we actually are.
But it's also showing how many people you're able to reach by the things you're doing. Like, I don't think it's like more of a vanity number. I think it's really more of the number of people that you're able to impact. And
what's a vanity number?
That you do that, you're like, oh, I need this many followers. You're just like doing interesting things like a Dark Lord tasting because all the people that can't go, it's like, well, let's drink it here. Like, right. You didn't pay? Sorry, like, come join us. We'll drink it with you. So like, how many people showed up? It was probably a good number.
Yeah, it's a good number.
Like those things, it's hard to quantify, but I'm sure they walked out with beer.
It's funny, like, but until we opened the tap room, those days were like completely. If you just looked at the numbers, no different, no different from that Sunday to this Sunday. Now there's a bar, they kind of sit and we'll have a beer afterwards, but I could easily program a different event that would make us more money if I wanted to. But I think there are things that are hard to quantify. Like the people who come, like that is one of the events where we get people, like Sam, right, was the one. This is the first year that I wasn't doing the pouring. Sam was doing it. And Sam, how many people were saying like, thank you, thank you? Like every year they just say thanks, thanks, thanks.
People were super excited.
Yeah, very excited. Yeah. So like how do you quantify that? So these people are coming here and having like you can sit down, man, wherever you want, and having like a really meaningful experience to them, something that like, I've never tasted this beer ever, and now you have it going back to 2008, and like that's really cool of you to do, and that's I mean, reason alone, one, to do it, and two, like, you know what, that'll probably come around. I'm sure if someone's like, well, let's go here again. That was a really cool thing of them to do. And how do you quantify that? I mean, there's just like no way to. I think it's just like try to be a good member of the community, do cool things, promote things that I think are important to beer, which are sharing things, not trying to like, flip this thing on the secondary market.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, going to Dark Order Day, it's gross, man. You leave and there's people like with dollar bills in their hand. Let me take that back. $100 bills in their hand. Being like, what you got? Trying to get all the, the rare variants. I got knocked into by a guy who was then like annoyed, looked at what I had, and then was angry at me that I didn't have the variant that he was looking for. You're angry at me?
Right.
But like that, I think, is like a terrible side of craft beer, and one that gets a lot of the most like devoted hobbyists, devoted in terms of how much time and effort they put into it.
Right.
Like it's they have a really outsized voice, and I certainly don't want that to be what people think craft beer is. I'd rather it be like, I went to this fest, I've got way more than I ever want to drink. Why don't we all just come and get a sip of it? Because all I need is that much. That's how much dark beer I have every year. I have about that much of it, and I'm like, cool.
Right.
I'm good till next year.
I've tried a full bottle. It's stuff all you want to do is share.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think this place is interesting in that it's for a place where it's important to you to know something about what you're doing. It's important for your people to know how to serve beer and to know about the beers that they're serving, where you're trying to create that kind of level of like wine service, like you're saying. But it doesn't feel pretentious. It feels it's very comfortable. It's quirky, like, so you get this sort of unusual, unexpected neons and the decorations and the bison, and so it's.
His name is Dusty.
Dusty, I saw the placard. Right? Yeah, you're able to kind of have a both and we were at Old Irving Brewing a while ago now,
Cool.
but they do a similar thing where there's like really high quality beer and food. And because all the people involved in it have like these, gourmand backgrounds.
The food there is.
Yeah, but
Really
it
good.
comes in this like neighborhood bar package, right?
Yeah.
And I think
That's cool.
it's this isn't the same feel, but it has a kind of both and quality to it. I think that you're able to get of, I want this to be good, but like I don't need to be a jerk about it.
Well, like,
Right.
all right, so craft beer, I'm guessing we all agree that beer, and especially to me, craft beer or whatever that means to you is cool.
Yeah.
But why is it cool? Is it cool because there's some guy who stands in a long line and it's really hard to get? Is
Right.
it cool because it's exclusive? To some people it is. I'm certainly going to not be able to sustain a business on just the most exclusive beers that there are, especially now with these tap rooms, because they're all going out of the tap rooms now. So why is beer cool? Well, there's a lot of reasons why beer is cool. Why don't you talk to one of our bartenders or bottle shop people about why they think this beer is cool? And it's not going to be ever, well, because there's so little of it made. You're never going to get this
Right,
again.
right.
And that's to me that's lame. That isn't cool. So that's what we try to do is like, beer's cool. This is why we think it's cool. I mean, look at this outlet just for like pop art nowadays. Like the beer labels themselves.
Yeah.
Like the amount of like amazing graphic design and art that's able to be made, and actually like putting, paying artists and graphic designers to make this stuff. It's almost like the modern day, album covers, where it's like pop art. It's like a really great place for it. That's cool. A place where an artist can make a living because of the craft beer industry. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think, obviously how good the beer is to drink, how it tastes better than a lot of these mass-produced beers, and how the times you have with them are obviously, to me, I mean, it's a social lubricant, obviously.
Sure.
I think that's cool. So that's what we kind of embody is what we think is cool about beer. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I would agree.
So one other question I was thinking about as we were prepping for this episode, and partly looking at the tap room thing, I guess I'm curious about how important it is to cultivate a personal relationship. I'm thinking of it as like a personal relationship with your customers, partly because I think the breweries that I feel closest to, and I'm pretty like, I'm not, I as much as I love craft beer, like there's only a couple breweries I'm like really into, to the point that like I'll go out of my way to like get their stuff, and one of them's like nearby me where I live.
Yeah,
and this
which is a reason to
Right.
be into it, because this is made where I'm from.
right where I'm from. And but there is a feeling of personal connection. You get to know the people there who are working there. You see them in the posts. You hear their voices in the emails.
Savvy little like branding, marketing trick, right? Where I had Sam off camera, bring him into it, right?
Right.
Super savvy.
So, yeah. You don't miss a trick. But I guess I'm curious, like, I don't know that I get the same feeling from what you're doing, just partly because so much of what you're doing is like, what's the least amount of friction to connect to people.
It's so it's so true. It's so true.
When I was looking at your live stream of your menu, like, I was like,
It's laziness.
Right, is it really that
Now
hard?
you're
So,
getting it.
Okay, right. That's what I'm looking at. Going, that was easier than updating the webpage.
Yes, but it's also like
Start.
that'd be cool.
Right.
Like it'd be cool, and now we don't have to do this thing that sucks and nobody wants to do. Yeah, so like that to me was a win-win. Like this is kind of cool, and
Yeah,
It
it solves
just
the
is more
problem for me.
efficient.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it was funny. I was on there just to like be like, is this really what it says it is? You're watching it. You're kind of reading a little bit.
3 hours later.
You're kind of like waiting to see like, I don't think anything's gonna happen. But
sometimes stuff happens, but very rarely.
Yeah.
And when it does, you'll be very disappointed
right.
because it's just like the camera moves or somebody just replaces
Replaces the thing, right?
The one time it is good to have it be live rather than is this beer still on draft?
Yeah.
Has the beer kicked yet?
Sure.
So it's like even before it's ever going to be online anywhere, you're going to see someone. You're going to see Ryan, setting a ladder up and putting it up there.
But do you and maybe so I guess curiously, do you think I'm wrong in that you do have personal connections, or do you think there's something different going on?
Of course, we have personal connections. I mean, I think Ryan and Sam and the other bartenders, they have personal connections with the people here.
Yeah.
Same with the bottle shop, and I have personal connections to a lot of the customers as well. But being at the bar, that's hospitality. So I think you have to have personal connections. I think it's important. I think that's why people go to bars, is for personal connections and stuff.
Not drink alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And with the bottle shop, it's a very different thing. It's also hospitality, but it's much more of a retail thing, which was something that I definitely learned. Is retail and hospitality, and they're both a little bit of each, but this one's more towards the hospitality side, and that's more towards the retail side. But yeah, the funny thing is, I think I have better conversations with people. Just my personality on the bottle shop side. Yeah, we just like get into it and start talking about all sorts of crazy stuff. We're here. I'm like, well, I can't say. I never. Not with anyone here. But yeah. I think you have to want to connect with people,
And you're saying, do you think that happens more for you and for this place in person, like on premise? I guess maybe what I mean in terms of personal connection is, do you feel like you're doing? Are you making that in using some of the digital tools that are so big for a lot of people?
Totally. I definitely am. I am very oblivious to it, and sometimes I am confronted with that sort of thing, and it's a little kind of weird and flattering. I'm like, oh wow, people. I mean, the famous one, the most famous one for me, famous, different word, insert a different, more accurate word. Was there was a beer festival at Firestone Walker, and there were these pictures going around of a guy who had like made a little mask out of my face, and was like going around with like a sign about like basically like this little like inside joke that we do on the Insiders Roundtable, the radio show. And I was like, wow, that guy really gets it. Or there was a video another time of someone was doing this thing about beer festivals, and they were at Dark Lord Day, and they were interviewing people about zombie dust, and this one guy that they just happened to pick up essentially trolled them without them ever knowing.
Oh, really?
Because we have an inside joke about zombie dust, which we all really like, but we just use that as an example of like people making these things to be bigger than life.
Sure.
And he totally trolled them. They didn't really know, they weren't cool. They didn't get like they were focusing on like something kind of what I thought was not cool about beer. Not zombie dust. Zombie dust is a good beer. I like it.
Right.
I named a bison after it. But he totally trolled them and never even said anything to us. Never said anything. And then somebody one day was like, "Oh my God, have you seen this thing?" And he called himself. Well, we have these guys called the Dust Brothers.
Yep.
And he's like, I'm what we call a dust brother. I'm always ISO. I'm looking for dust. Whenever I see zombie dust, I'm ISO. And we're just like losing our minds. And the name of the video was, "Are You a Dust Brother?" And we're like, oh my God. So like when that stuff sort of happens, I'm like, oh, I'm definitely connecting with people that I've never met before. And they get it. They think that's really funny too. So in that sense, sometimes I'm, confronted with it, and it's usually like a, wow, that's really cool. But I don't try to do that.
Right.
I think that's the first way to just be like,
To turn everyone off.
yeah, not cool.
But that's the quantifying number right there of branding.
Right.
Could you just think you're just doing a thing, and then someone's making a joke, trolling people out of something deep.
Like so meta.
Internal,
Oh my God.
And you're like, wait a minute, you caught on and you're ripping on these people that are trying to do something cool.
And I couldn't even imagine somebody's at a festival and he was like, what do you think about zombie dust? And like that's where he goes.
Immediately,
It's like, wow, I'm just glad that was caught in time. And it trickled back to me.
Right.
That was like,
that's your kind of
honestly, it did have meaning to me. I was like, wow, I feel lucky that I saw that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's some part of you impacted another human being.
Yeah, right. And it was a joke. It was funny. I
Right.
mean, and it was just people having a good time, really.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it was a win-win because the guy who was making the video thought it was like a great soundbite too, and named his clip after it, and like no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
But
well, that's like Howard Stern with all those people that show up in courtrooms and yell.
Yeah.
Baba
Yeah,
Booey
Baba
or
Booey,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
should make Dust Brothers shirts.
Exactly.
That's good merch for you.
It's funny. We did for Dark Lord Day again as a joke, and who knows? We've had people asking if we can buy them. So don't want to get on the wrong side of Three Floyds.
No,
of course not.
They can be a little touchy. They don't have a sense of humor sometimes. We're laughing with them, not at them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not at them. It's the people that false
some of the way
idolized
people react
something.
is-
It's like, no, it's a beer. It's false idol. Like, oh, but I can't get it. Oh, and you're gonna
Right. Or like you go into a store that has like 1,000 beers and someone says, "Do you have zombie dust?" And then they say no and they turn around and walk out.
Right.
Which was, what the beer buyer at the largest Binny's, told me would happen all the time. So,
largest bennies.
yeah. No, we have to take a break 'cause I have to go to the bathroom. I'm like squirming
Right.
around.
Cool.
I know you said that, but I didn't have to. And then, are we almost done?
Oh, yeah.
Probably? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have other questions you want to get to? I think we're actually in a good place.
I'm in a good spot.
People respond to that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
When he said it's authentic, which is
Right.
what the issue is he's not doing something that's inauthentic.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
What time is it?
3:30.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we good?
We
might just-
if
we
you
just
guys
wrap up.
were laughing about me while I was gone, that has to be
That's
part of it.
just, we can't cut that.
Yeah, that's
You
very
really
much
said
on
about
brand for me.
3 Floyds.
It's a branding, marketing podcast. It needs to be on brand for me.
It'd be even better if you go to the bathroom and you're just like, these fucking guys.
Yeah, right.
Right, it's all
Fucking
con.
guys. Or just,
Oh, that's true. I guess that would also have to be part of it.
Right.
see these assholes I'm talking to?
And I
These
remember like,
fucking
when I go to the bathroom, I'm gonna take out the mic. I
Right.
totally didn't, but whatever.
That's all right. It'll be all right. So one last question, I guess, and then before we wrap up, and so I know I guess you have your Weiner shirt, and I know you've kind of been a big advocate for scratch.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious what are some of the breweries that you've really connected to and responded to, and when you become an advocate like a Weiner or a Scratch, like
Scratch.
what is it about them that's you're responding to?
They're it's such a it's used so much that it's almost become meaningless. But the authenticity, everyone's going for authenticity. There's authenticity, and like I can say, oh, I'm being authentic, but then there's people like Scratch who are like, those people are like authentic. They're not a lot of farmhouse brewers, I feel like, are like playing the role of like what they think a farmhouse brewer should do. And it's just these people who are inspired to do this thing, and they are just singular in their ability to do it. And I mean, nobody can make the beers that they make. It's not possible, because they make it from the land in that area, and nobody in that area knows the land like they do. So it's not possible. It's like a singular expression of theirs, of that area. They couldn't make their beer somewhere else. It's about them having grown up in that land. And for those who don't know, Scratches, they do like foraged brewing, a lot of it locally sourced and locally foraged. And they've got this guy who's almost like a savant of knowing like what's coming up out of the ground. And he's almost like a like botanical like Zen master. Like he was doing a bunch of stuff with birch, and a huge tornado, really dangerous tornado, like ripped through the countryside down there. And he was telling me how it like ran this path and like took out all the birch trees. And I was like, oh no, you used to do all this amazing beer with like birch sap and bark and stuff like that. He's like, oh, it's fine, because in 18 months we're going to have, it was some kind of mushroom, like oyster mushrooms all over the place, and we'll be able to do it. And I realized that no matter what happens, he just knows kind of the land, and what to do with it. And he knows brewing well enough that he can just take what is given to him from the land and do it. And even as he's like clearing trails, like, you got to keep the trails clear. I was walking with him, and he's like, so, for example, this branch, we're gonna, cut it down. I'll use the leaves to make this kind of beer, and then the sticks I'll use, as kindling to start the bread oven, and the sourdough culture is kind of their mother culture for the brewery and for the bakery. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, and I realized it was like, he wasn't speaking hypothetically. I'm like, oh, you mean this branch? You're going to put these? He's like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And I have to clear because they don't waste anything. It's like, why would I just cut a branch down and not do anything with this branch? Or for me, I'm like, what? I didn't grow up in the country in any means, but the mentality of just using everything, and then two, the ability to do it,
know how to do it,
and also just talk about not doing it so other people can, like, hey everyone, like, the kind of the demonstrative kind of wokeness that people something like that. Like, there's none of it. And to me, I was like, wow, everyone pay attention to these people, because they're really, really special, to the point where I feel fortunate to be aware of them, and to even be in the same state so I can get their beer and stuff like that. And I think they're just really, really a fun brewery.
Yeah, I think certainly thinking about this sort of feeling, we're hitting a point in craft where, because growth has been slowing for so long, we're still kind of slowly growing, right? But it's been slowing. There's that kind of feeling of like, people are kind of feeling like, well, this is as big as it's going to get, so now we're like, even though we used to like each other and used to like kind of play nice and everybody was helping each other, maybe now like we have to kind of be a little more cautious about some of that, right? But there's there's another set of people who are saying, no, there's like a huge part of the pie that we can still get into, and maybe it's the light lagers that are going to get us in there. But it's certainly my hope that people like Michael Roper and you here at the Beer Temple, who are kind of like just like holding down, and even thinking of people like Scratch, who are like, they're not trying to be, Scratch is never going to be an internationally distributed brewery if that's what they're doing, if they're foraging.
Yeah, you can't really scale that.
You
What
can't
do
scale
do?
it quick. Right. So people are just like, we have a craft, and we'll find our audience, and we hopefully grow it to a sustainable level, and hopefully, like I guess it's my hope that it is sustainable, that there is an audience out there.
Yeah.
Of people who are just like, sure, it's fun to like try the new stuff and whatever crazy stuff is going into these other beers, but like I always know I can go back, and hopefully I will go back. Like that's, I'm thinking about like flagship Februaries, like kind of like a reminder of like, don't forget like what got you into this. So yeah, you're I think an interesting example of somebody who has a vision and a perspective, even though you're not out there necessarily telling anybody to do or think anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're just doing your thing and saying, here I am, and I want, this is you, come get it. And, you're opening it up to people.
Yeah.
And sharing it. So.
And if you're not sure about it, like, I don't know, is this me? We'll be like, well, we'll teach you all about it, and you'll know if it's you or not.
Come try
if it's
something.
not, cool, but if it is, come on in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's what we try to do.
Great.
Cool.
Oh,
Beers are done.
Beer, mine's been done. So.
It's 2 beers.
all right then. You're one.
I'm one. That wraps up this episode. You've been listening to 2 Beers and a Podcast with Brad and Mike.
And if you like what you heard, be sure to do the liking, subscribing, and rating wherever you found us. If you have an idea for a topic or a brewery pairing, message at 2beerspod on Twitter or Instagram. And if you want to learn more about our video, web, and social media marketing services, we're at 2beersandapodcast.com. That's the number 2, beersandapodcast.com, or email 2beerspod@gmail.com.
Until next time, keep telling stories.
Keep drinking, keep tweeting.
I think you shouldn't keep drinking.
You should probably.
You can't say keep drinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for
you,
your
guys.
time. Thanks for
Awesome.
doing this. This was awesome.
All right.